Steeped in ancient Scandinavian history, she can be young and beautiful. She could appear as a wolf, a bear, or a raven. She's not a goddess, but a dreadic witch, a seer of lost knowledge often sought out. She can look scary when needed to weed out the weaknesses. She can choose to be more than just one person. She's a shaman, a sorcerer, a healer, a teacher. She's considered by many as the first to die on the entire face of the earth, living deep inside a dark forest in a living cottage that spins and is propelled by a pair of giant chicken legs. The forest is her lair, the creatures of the woods her offspring. She has sisters and daughters that often can be traced back to her. She flies across the skies in a giant mortar and pestle, resembling a giant cauldron. And if you see her, well, then you're blessed. But it's when you can't see her that you should be weary. She's a keeper of secrets and most ancient knowledge, but nothing comes for free. So tonight we come to her boundary fence, one with 13 posts, 12 of which are topped with glowing human skulls. We knock gently upon her gate and respectfully enter and await the chicken-legged cottage to spin around and acknowledge us to enter. Join us tonight if you dare for a visit into the legend and lore of Baba Yaga in all her wisdom. Now that is, if you can pass her tests and bring her something in return.
From a child born into this world, we are taught what to believe. Closed-minded we become, fearful to be deceived. Still we desire to know what lies beyond that locked door. The art of the storyteller, conjuring tales of legend and lore. History hidden, lost knowledge, things forgotten and the unknown. These are the things that direct us and will set the tone. Welcome, friends, to another episode of Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Well, my wife and her girlfriend recently completed a 3-part seminar in St. Louis on the Scandinavian origins of Baba Yaga, as if we're going to pronounce it correctly.
Oh, come on now. It's Baba Yaga.
It's Baba Yaga. We're going to say Baba Yaga. But I did find online, and I thought it was interesting, some Scandinavians, it's like, hey, we love that you're giving us a head bow, but, the least you could do is attempt to pronounce it correctly. It's Baba Yaga. However, in the seminar in St. Louis, my wife Sarah was like, she still says Baba Yaga because it's just what us Westerners are used to.
Well, we always Americanize things.
Now, her story goes back so far beyond what most consider her appearances in RPG role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons, video games.
There you go again, Eric.
There's the Dungeons & Dragons reference.
Actually, to be fair, that's probably the first place I heard of the Baba Yaga.
And then we've talked about even in the Hellboy recent movie, which I thought they did a very good job of.
Well, and one of the things, of course, that I referenced, I've talked about it before. I've been reading the Hellboy comic books. She features very prominently in the Hellboy mythology. There's entire books dedicated to her. So, she's a very important figure. I think she's out to get revenge on Hellboy for taking her eye. So,
well, because to the Scandinavian people, she is not to be feared, but rather respected. She can play a vital role, a part in their day-to-day lives, legend and lore still today. She's been depicted as a type of a goddess, but that is not true. She is more of a spirit, a force, a witch, but not in the kind of stereotypical definitions that us Westerners often dream up. Instead, she is more of a true seer, a keeper of knowledge, a soul as old as the earth. In layman's terms, I feel the best describe her as Mother Nature.
That is, I found that she's very much a nature spirit, a force of nature, if you will. Another reference was that she's very much akin to trickster spirits.
Yeah.
They compared her to Loki from Norse mythology.
I've heard that, yep.
Coyote from Native American mythology. She's good. She's bad. No matter what else she may be, though, it seems like she's always a catalyst for change. She's always there a lot of she guides the heroes and heroines of the stories, towards something new and different, and maybe not always better. I mean, she definitely has her evil side. She's known to snatch and eat children. So, I mean, she's not always good. She's not always bad.
And sometimes I've seen her referenced almost as a type of a jinn, a genie. But you don't just bring your wishes to her and,
No, you've got to earn
them. You've got to earn it. You don't get them like with a beautiful bow tied onto it. And here you go.
And routinely through, seemingly impossible tasks.
Now, her rules are quite simple, really. Don't disturb her in all of her daily labors unless you truly desire and truly need her assistance or help. Basically, for someone that's as old as the earth, we're trivial. We're specks of dust. I mean, in her world, she has to pull off from doing all the things that she does to even take time to acknowledge those that come to her. So don't waste her time. I mean, that's kind of where the respect aspect comes in. And as Bill said, and very true, don't expect something for nothing. You've got to put the work in and you've got to earn it. Don't come to her expecting, as I said, your wish to be all wrapped up with a pretty little bow on top. As if she's your servant or your slave. She's far beyond that. Instead, if she allows you to enter her gates, and if you make it down the pathway to the spinning cottage perched atop these giant chicken feet, and if that spinning cottage stops to face you, to acknowledge you, then you're lucky. You may enter. But always bring a gift. Utmost respect for the busiest of all witches. Now, chances you won't stop her doing her task. It's not like she's going to pull up a chair and sit down at the table and have a 3-hour conversation with you. You might enter her room and you may not even see her. It's said that she'll tell you maybe to take a seat by the hearth or a table, and she may call to you from another room even in the house.
Well, and much like a TARDIS,
yeah,
her chicken-legged hut is much, much larger on the inside than it is from the outside.
Gigantic.
I think it appears to be just a single-room hut from the outside. And depending on the artwork, I think there are some times where it's like a 2-story home or whatever. But yeah, it's little more than a hut, basically.
Yeah.
But then when you go inside, it's huge. And sometimes, you said you don't always see her, but sometimes it's my understanding that she actually can occupy the entirety of the inside of the hut.
Yeah.
So she's gigantic.
She's everywhere. Yeah, she's everywhere. Others that have made this journey, this quest, say that they might see the backside of her over working by the fireside hearth or mixing a concoction or doing whatever. Again, she's very, very busy. So for her to even invite you in the home, that's a major undertaking. To the Scandinavian people, she's a good teacher. If she finds the gift that you bring her of interest, and these gifts are kind of vague, I found, at least in Scandinavian lore. It's not necessarily a monetary gift. It could be something that just is near and dear to you, but it has to be important to you in some aspect. Don't bring a trivial gift. If you've got, 100 horses, don't bring a horse. You know what I mean? It's got to really mean something, which again is just that respect aspect. Again, you're not going to wish something from her. Like, I want to be wealthy. I want to be the czar. I want to be the king. And don't expect that.
Well, it's like I said, when she helps the heroes and heroines, it's a quest for self-actualization. It's something you need to want to make yourself better, not improve your lot in life. It's not trivial.
Yes.
It's about being a better person.
So you might ask for something and it might be sincere. Like, I want to be able to support my family. That's something that's not so selfish. But still, she might not just give that to you. She may give you pieces of the puzzle that will certainly help you do that. But it's up to you how to assemble that and what you do with it, put in the work to see that mature. Kind of the ingredients to a recipe, and you have to work on the recipe. But patience is another virtue, as they say. If you leave with more, often you would leave with more questions than you might with answers. But if you don't follow those instructions to a T that she gave you, and if you're not of good heart, and if you're not willing to try to help yourself, well, then you, my friend, may not find the favor with the oldest witches. possibly the oldest druid or the original witch, as some people might speculate. Scandinavian folklore tells of lost and wandering souls that are helped out sometimes by versions of Baba Yaga. Now, this is one thing I had to wrap my mind around. Baba Yaga isn't necessarily a single entity.
Well, one of the stories I found even referred to the fact that there would be as many as, I think they routinely talk about the 3 Baba Yagas, and they're all identical. And yeah, like depending on where you're at, one, it's a regional thing a lot of the times too, is like every country in that region and in the Slavic area of Europe have their own Baba Yaga, the Russians and the Eastern European and all that. So yeah, I mean, it's not always the same. And again, like you said, they're different versions, if you will.
Sometimes they're considered sisters. Sometimes they're considered, she has daughters. It kind of goes back, I was kind of reminiscent to the 3 crones. You mentioned 3 Baba Yagas. There's a lot of weird ties. And again, as we find in history, maybe that's where some of these have stemmed from, is this oldest of stories, as the Scandinavians, tell it. Perhaps she might even present herself in the form of a dog, a wolf, a fox, a raven, a bear, but it always seems to be involving nature, usually quite eager to help a wandering soul, especially find themselves out of her dark forest. Like maybe she has sisters and daughters that kind of patrol the area and trying to keep the Baba Yaga free from interruption.
Well, and one of the interpretations of the Baba Yaga story is that her hut lays at the boundary between our world and the next. And so, when you're lost in the forest, symbolically speaking, it could be that you're on your way, to the world beyond. And if she helps you out of that, then she's essentially saving your life. And she's making sure that you don't die.
Right.
And I believe the stories say that she can kind of traverse that boundary at will, however she wants. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of symbolism in the story that, of course, I was familiar with the Hellboy stuff and the stories from Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot, being an old DM as I am. And so, yeah, I didn't realize how much more there was to this story.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Of course,
the tip of the iceberg.
I'm used to that sort of stereotypical Baba Yaga description. I know you said she could be beautiful, she could be this, she could be that. I just, if I could, for a moment,
go ahead.
Just to jump in, this is, when you think of Baba Yaga, this is sort of the description that everybody has, that generalized description. She's an enormous, hideous, ferocious-looking old woman with skinny, bony legs and a skeletal frame. Her skin is wrinkled and gray, resembling tree bark. She has long, unkempt gray or white hair, dressed in rags, or items scavenged from the forest. A long, crooked nose, piercing cold eyes that glow with an eerie light, and sharp iron teeth. Basically, every aspect of her body in this form is grotesque and deformed. And her personality is equally powerful and volatile. She's quick to anger. As she flies around in her mortar and pestle, like tempests accompany her. Violent storms go where she goes, and she controls the weather in that aspect. And amongst her possessions, she has mirrors that turn into lakes. She has combs that turn into forests. She has scarves that turn into rivers.
Again, all nature
related. Which, when I first started getting into this, I didn't know all of that. She's a scary old witch that lives in a chicken hut.
And one of the things that really threw me for a loop, maybe you knew it, but I did not realize she flew around in a mortar and a pestle, basically resembling, because of its size, like she's in a cauldron looking, but that's how she flies around. It's not the typical witch, on a broom flying around.
Now she does have a broom with her.
She does.
She uses the broom to wipe away her tracks, so you never know where she's at.
Never know where she's at. That's right.
Now there are stories, of course, that do have her flying on a flying broom, and even some stories where she's on a flying carpet. If you want to harken back to your reference to the djinn, of course, that's sort of from those storylines. I mean, there's so many varied descriptions.
She's very intriguing.
There's so many different descriptions, and she's attributed to so many things, but it always does seem to come back to being sort of a primal force of nature.
Mother Nature, again, it's the best, definition I can come up with. Definition of her is some form of Mother Nature. She is a philosopher, a mentor, a teacher, a sage, if you will, wise by her age of thousands, if not millions of years of her existence in history. Now, one of the things I barely touched upon in the opening was I found in some of the oldest stories written down that she could have been the first to ever die on the face of the earth. And to your point, the dark forest, her placement is kind of right there on the curtains of between death and life. Did she die? Was she the first to come back? Did her power, did her knowledge, did that allow her to come back? Is she a guardian? There's so many questions.
Well, and even like in the stories, Koschei is a good story. I mean, she has the ability to make you immortal.
Yes.
So she has an influence over life and death. And again, I mean, if you look at her as a nature spirit, I mean, ultimately, you're at the whims of nature one way or the other. So, yeah, there's just so much going on. I mean, some stories she eats children.
Yeah.
And some stories she's very, very helpful. As a matter of fact, the last thing I'm going to talk about is a story where she is a very helpful entity. But still, you've got this terrifying visage, and it's just, there's so much. It's a very complicated topic. Much more complicated than I thought when I started looking into it.
Likewise. Well, I've got an actual fable that was recorded of one of Baba Yaga's. And if you don't have anything, I'll dive right into this. Well, in my fable of Baba Yaga, and bear with me, this is a Scandinavian story. I've tried to relate it back to English as much as I could. There was once a man of common stature. Now he desired to be more, and he heard the tales of the old witch of the woods known as Baba Yaga, or Baba Yaga, and inquired how he might find or be able to approach her. So he found some villagers that kind of practiced the old ways, that were eager to share with him how to approach, being in humble heart, and that he must bring a gift. They said, go deep into the dark forest, and about the time you want to give up, you may reach the center, and there you'll find a clearing, surrounded by age-old trees that seem to serve as guardians. Now you may notice the wildlife in abundance all around this area, but do not harm them. They are also there to pay their respects to the old witch. Now, you'll find a fence of sorts. It's made of boards and brambles, but it has 13 posts. Now, 12 of these posts have human skulls mounted on them that somehow illuminate in the night, because often it seems that you come across this at nighttime. And those are the ones that have failed in her eyes and now are there to serve her and to guard her. So definitely kind of this menacing aspect. Approach the old gate made of these branches and briars and boards. Knock only once. And from the shadows of the clearing, a towering cottage may then approach, with it spinning around in circles, around and around, with the earth shaking with each step of these two giant chicken legs and feet supporting it. Present your gift for the cottage and the one inside. If the spinning cottage stops and comes to rest, viewing you, then the gate will open, accepting you into her busy, busy workings of the master of nature and the preserver of knowledge. It says, then approach on the path as the cottage now lowers itself with the chicken legs, lowering it to allow you to enter through its door. Now be mindful of yourself. Wipe your boots before entering, and enter only if you're pure of intention and seeking knowledge to do good. Be careful in what you wish for remember you're but a speck of dust, Baba Yaga, and in the grand realm of things, for her to even take this disturbance from her tasks is a blessing. Enter the home with your gift, but know you may not actually see the old one. Some only hear her, some may only feel her presence. Still others say they see her only from a distance, continuing to work on whatever it is that she needs to. You may hear the question, have you come of your own intent? And what is it that you seek? Be clear and precise to ask for something like, I want my lands to have rain or water. Now to her, while not intentional, of malice, that could come in the forms of years of monsoon simply washing all the dirt away. There is no time with Baba Yaga. There is no limits with Baba Yaga. And for her to kind of lower herself to those understandings, it takes a little bit more of a communication. Now the old man, he decided, I'm going to do exactly as I've been instructed. He came to the dark forest for many days. He wandered. He became cold and he became hungry. and he thought to himself, surely I will die. He came across a pool where he spied a crab feeding, and he sharpened a stick and planned to spear it for food. But possibly in his delusional mind of hunger, he heard the crab speak. Please, no, don't kill me. I've lost my way, much as you have, and I would like to return to the sea through this underwater passage. The man, hungry, nearly starving, somehow felt mercy and allowed the crab to escape through the tunnel back to the sea. Now the next day, the man, hungrier still, came across a hive of honey with bees swarming around it. And he thought, oh, how good this honey would taste to him, and it'll help me to survive. But again the man heard the buzzing voice of the bees. No, no, please don't steal our honey. We've worked hard to store it up, to feed our own family, much like you desire. The man shook his head, hardly believing the thoughts that was crossing his mind. As the bees swarmed around him, they did not sting him, and he simply backed away, allowing them to be. On the third day, still wandering in the dark forest, the man, now totally delusional with lack of food, chilled to the bone, found himself climbing out on a limb to reach a bird's nest. There he could find 4 tiny little eggs, and he thought how good these eggs will surely taste. But the mother bird flew down and landed on a twig near his face. Again she spoke, and he could understand. Please don't take my eggs. We're the last of our kind, and I want very much for my children to have a better life than I. Again the man, against better judgment, thought to himself, this is wrong. I should not take these eggs. And so he climbed back down and continued on his journey. Finally, the man, starved, cold, ravaged, wearing clothes that were torn, found himself in a clearing in the moonlight. It was surrounded by a board and thicketed fence with 13 poles and 12 glowing skulls atop all but the one pole. He pulled out his gift, an item he showed no one, and he told no one of what it was, but something very private and very important to he himself. He held it out, kneeling at the gate, shaking with hunger and cold. As the spinning cottage approached, the ground shook with its might. Each step of the giant chicken feet that animated it, and the cottage stopped spinning and faced him as the small gate unlatched and swung inward. He made his way down the path, as he had been told to expect, and the cottage lowered itself to allow him to step up and through the door. As he was accepted into the cottage, he saw only the back side of an elderly woman working feverishly over a table near the hearth. She asked the questions. Have you come on your own intent? The man's shaky voice responded, Yes, I have. Good, said Baba Yaga. What is it that you seek? Again the man shakily replied, I desire a good horse, madam, one that I can tend my crops with and to help provide for my family. This is your wish, was her reply. Yes, madam, yes it is. For you to find me deep in these woods, and for you to know to bring me such a fine gift, and your replies, you have shown preparation. So for this reason I will consider your request of a fine horse, the finest in all the land. But first, you must do something for me. Are you willing to do that? The man, somewhat puzzled, yet respectful, answered, Yes, madam, I was told I cannot expect something for nothing. Yes, that is good. So I wish for you to take 4 horses of varying age and condition that will appear to you in my yard. I want you to care for them, get to know each of them, and then return all of them to me within 3 days' time. At that time, if I find you worthy, you may have your pick of these 4 horses to keep for yourself. But fail me or cross me, and you shall not live to tell the tale. Do you understand? The man swallowed hard. He thought, 4 horses? How on earth am I going to care for 4 horses for 3 days? I'm a simple man and living in poverty, but he bridled his tongue. Yes, ma'am, I certainly will do my best to return all 4 back to you within the 3 days. Good, said Baba Yaga. and with a blink of an eye he found himself outside the cottage in the yard, with indeed 4 horses. Now the first was the finest of all stallions in the land. The second was a fine horse still, but not quite as good as the first. The third was an older horse, still with plenty of life and desire to please. And the fourth horse, it was small in size, frail in build, and with its ribs showing, and wasn't at all what he desired. Now the man led the 4 horses from the yard, and they eagerly seemed to go with him, each of them appearing loyal and trusting. He surprisingly found his way out of the dark forest much easier than he had found his way inside, and within a few hours he was back home to his family. There he put the horses in a tiny barn, in a tiny corral, and fed them with all the grass he and his family could gather, allowing them to drink from his own well. Now each day the horses seemed to grow in spirit and energy, becoming more and more unruly. Finally, on the 3rd day, the man who had done nothing but care for these creatures 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, was eager to return them to the witch of the woods. He kissed his wife and his children goodbye, hoping for the best, but still concerned that he may never see them again, for he knew his test was not yet over. Now upon leaving his home, all 4 horses broke away from him and ran in all different directions. The man was overcome in dread and fear, knowing that if he did not return these 4 horses to Baba Yaga, his head would surely find its place on that last fence post of the witch's yard. Now he finally caught up with the first of the horses, who upon seeing the man ran along the beach and began to swim out into the ocean. The man knew he could not swim after the horse, and surely the undertow would pull even the strongest steed, the stallion, far beneath its waves. But then something happened. The horse turned back and began to swim towards the man on the beach, and it ran to him gratefully, as he saw many crabs had been chasing the horse, clasping and chomping at its hooves. He remembered he had saved the crab that day to return it back to the ocean or the sea, and the crab had returned the favor in fold. Now this horse followed the man eagerly without even being roped, and then soon they came across another of the horses. This time it was running directly at him, and soon stopped, panting and lathered with a sweat, being chased by hundreds of bees stinging the horse. Again he remembered sparing the bees' collection of honey, and resisting eating it. Surely this was the same bees that had come to repay him for the kindness that he showed that day. The horses then continued to follow the men eagerly, with the stallion, where they all came across the remaining 2 horses. The first finding the most frail one, who had stopped to rest, and was very eager just to join and find the group again. Lastly, the 4th horse was found, again running to join the group, this one being chased by birds, who flew down, bombarding the horse, chasing it back to its keeper. The man proudly arrived with all 4 horses safely once again to Baba Yaga's hut, being led there by none other than these same birds, who he had spared the eggs for, and all was good. At this time the mother bird, now with multiples of its own kind, was happy and singing, and she told the man, "Choose the frail horse when you are asked." He simply followed the others, but found out he was tired, and only stopped for a rest, for you to come find him. He will truly be loyal, and he will grow strong. Now the man once again entered the yard, and the old woman flew down out of the skies riding her giant mortar and pestle, to stop and inspect the horses, looking over each one. Well done indeed. You've put in all the planning, the work, and your desire for a horse is noble and not selfish. You showed my children of the forest, the animals, compassion and understanding. Therefore I will grant you your wish. You may choose one of these 4 horses to be your very own. The man began to weep and thanked the old woman, saying, "I would like this one," approaching the small, weak horse. Baba Yaga raised one eyebrow as she turned to look. "This tiny one? This is the weakest of the 4. Yes, madam, if you would allow it, I would like this one." "Then you have chosen most wisely. You have listened to the voices all around, the sentiments of the forest, and the spirits of the woods. For this one is the finest of breeding in the land, but was stunted at birth and rescued by myself. It will grow to be the most powerful, strong, and obedient of all horses, and shall bring you many years of good labor, and produce offspring to help your family both today, tomorrow, and beyond. This is the type of encounter that Scandinavians would expect, quite different from the scary old witch hag stories that, that we hear about here in America. And honestly, Ani, kind of come to mind with the Hollywood flash and flavor. But it's more of a life lesson learned, one taught, not forced, one learned, not given, and one honored to have received.
Well, like you, I picked out a Baba Yaga story that really was probably the most commonly mentioned in all the things that I was doing, and that is the story of Vasilisa the Beautiful. Now, Vasilisa lived happily with her mother and father until her mother fell ill when she was 8 years old. Her mother calls her to her deathbed, and she gives her a magical doll, and she tells her this doll will help her get through life. She must always keep the doll with her, and she must keep it secret from everyone. And she must offer it food and drink when she faces some challenge so that it will help her. After her mother's death, her father marries a woman with 2 daughters, and this woman is envious of Vasilisa's beauty and abuses her, just treats her horribly. She gives her harsh chores while her father is away on business trips, which he is often. And Vasilisa is only able to accomplish these tasks with the help of her doll. When Vasilisa and her stepsisters are old enough to marry, the stepmother refuses all of Vasilisa's suitors, saying that she cannot be married until her older sisters find husbands, hoping, of course, to one day be rid of Vasilisa. Now, hoping to be rid of Vasilisa, the stepmother keeps sending her into the woods on errands, knowing that deep in the forest there's a miserable little hut standing on chicken legs, home of the Baba Yaga, the old witch grandmother, and hoping that Baba Yaga might help her rid herself of this problem. Now, no one dared, of course, go near this hut because the Baba Yaga was known to eat people, but the stepmother kept sending Vasilisa into the forest hoping she would be eaten. Now, however many times she went, the little doll would always show her where to go to finish her chores, find whatever it was she was looking for, do what she needed to do, and to get out safely without ever coming near the hut that stood on chicken legs. Each time she would return safe and sound, her stepmother would hate her more and more for it. And finally, Vasilisa was sent directly to Baba Yaga's hut. Her stepmother sent her there to ask for fire. Now, on her way, 3 riders rushed past Vasilisa, 1 red, 1 white, and 1 black. Now, these are those who bring twilight, sunrise, and night, respectively. And Vasilisa arrived at Baba Yaga's hut just before darkness fell. Of course, she stands before the hut, and she sees the fence of human bones topped with human skulls, and she's frozen in horror. She doesn't know what to do. She's terrified. And suddenly the woods are filled with a terrible noise, trees groaning, branches creaking, and leaves rustling, and the Baba Yaga comes flying from the forest in her large iron mortar, driving it with a pestle and sweeping away her trail with a kitchen broom. The Baba Yaga demanded to know why this girl was there, and agrees to give her fire in return for work. She has to earn it. And she assigns Vasilisa impossible tasks. Vasilisa should not be able to do these things. But of course, she accomplishes them all with the little doll's help. Now she remains with the witch for some time as her servant and becomes curious about a number of things, but is warned by Baba Yaga that not every question leads to good. She says this even as she allows her to ask what she will, whenever she wants, whatever she wants to know. Now Vasilisa understands the implied threat here and only asks about the riders. This enrages Baba Yaga even more, who demands to know why she will not ask more. How come you don't ask more questions? There's all sorts of things for you to learn and know. Why don't you ask about more? Vasilisa responds, I'm only doing as you suggest. Well, this angers Baba Yaga even further, and she asks, well, how were you able to perform all the tasks? They should have been impossible. Vasilisa replies carefully that she has her mother's blessings, and that enabled her to finish these tasks. Now, Baba Yaga, rejecting anything blessed, tells her to leave. She sends her home with a skull containing the fire she was sent to fetch. And once it is brought inside the house, it burns the evil stepmother and stepsisters to ashes. And afterwards, Vasilisa and her doll leave the house. Vasilisa becomes a great seamstress, and with the doll's help, impresses the king so deeply that he falls in love with her. They are married, and of course, live happily ever after. So again, and it's implied throughout the story that Baba Yaga knew how she was doing the tasks.
Right.
But wanted to see if she would do as she was told, keep the doll secret. And when she was, when she did as she was told, she gave her the fire, which was a blessing. Again,
This
You know,
is very interesting because of what we were talking about. Again, if Baba Yaga is somehow the guardian of the veils in between life and death, and I don't know if you felt the same way, but this doll almost sounds like the essence, the spirit of her mother.
Yeah.
Maybe Baba Yaga had something to do with that doll's creation, you know.
I mean, again, she crafts all sorts of magic and spells.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. I think very intellectual fables, you know, which are, of course, always teachings, but not at all what I expected when I, you know, really started getting into the Baba Yaga stories and hearing the classes that Sarah and them were taking about it. So I felt I learned a tremendous amount of this and a lot of respect for it. Well, what about headline?
So I found a headline that maybe veers away a little bit from the topic, but I like that I felt it showed the true lasting cultural impact of Baba Yaga.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
as I read the headline, you know, we'll get there. Ukrainian Baba Yaga unmanned aerial vehicle has become a true nightmare for Russian forces. This is from ArmyRecognition.com, October 29th, 2024. The Baba Yaga is an unarmed, multi-rotor drone, and it has become a genuine nightmare for Russian forces. It symbolizes Ukrainian ingenuity in wartime technology and is designed specifically for high-precision nighttime strikes. The Baba Yaga is establishing itself as a weapon of choice in the ongoing conflict and was designed by the Ukrainian company Skyfall and entered service in 2023 as a response to Russia's air dominance. It is equipped with 6 rotors and has a top speed of 80 kilometers per hour, has an operational range of 10 kilometers, and a flight duration of about 23 minutes. That makes it well suited for targeted strikes on frontline positions in low visibility conditions. Its primary asset is its thermal camera, which allows it to detect targets from a distance of up to 120 meters. It can carry various types of munitions, including fragmentation shells, shape charges, and even anti-tank mines. It can essentially be used to demolish a building. Now, due to its effectiveness in nighttime missions and its precision strike capability, of course, it is the nightmare of Russian soldiers. Its 6 electric motors are virtually silent, so you don't hear it coming. The navigation and communication systems are especially reinforced so that it will always be connected, especially in areas where electronic jamming is in use.
It's almost witchcraft.
Yeah, the Baba Yaga has evolved into far more than a mere combat drone. Again, this lasting impact, this is a precision weapon that can come at you silently in the night. And, I mean...
Well, as I had said, when you see Baba Yaga, that's considered a blessing.
Yeah.
When you can't see her coming, then that's when you should be worried.
So that's why I picked that headline. I felt that it showed just the lasting impact of those stories.
Well, I just kind of did a Google search on Baba Yaga 2024, and I kept coming across this same story, and it wasn't really what I was looking for. I'll be straight up honest. But then as I started reading more about it, it's like, why does this keep coming up? It was a reference of a Baba Vanga, Vanga, and apparently this was a quote-unquote real-life seer, one who was a prophet, much like Nostradamus, and she is considered kind of the modern era Baba Yaga, and a similar name, obviously, as I said, Baba Vanga. Her name, and I will terribly butcher this, I will apologize in advance, Vangalia Pandiva Gastorvia, commonly known as Baba Vanga. We're going to call her Baba Vanga from now on.
Sounds easier.
Yes. She was blind, a Bulgarian, attributed a mystic, a healer who claimed to be able to foresee the future. She had been blinded since early in childhood, not birth, but early in childhood. She spent most of her life in the Ruptite area of Balaska Mountains in Bulgaria. She was born October 3rd, 1911. She died August 11th, 1996, there in Sofia, Bulgaria. She was 84 years old. Now, apparently, Baba Vanga, the blind seer and prophet, has predicted many past events that have come true. Of those, the death of Princess Diana of Wales. She predicted World War II, the fall of the Soviet Union, the Chernobyl nuclear incident, and many of these we've talked about on our podcast. The 9/11 attack on the Twin Towers, the rise of ISIS, and very recently, the against all odds return of the reelection of President Donald Trump, believe it or not, and even touched upon an attempted failed assassination of him.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was exactly, I was like, okay, maybe this is the story I'm looking for that I didn't know I needed. Now, although the clairvoyant passed away in 1996, some 28 years ago, she has foretold many other prophecies to occur in 2024 and 25 that are yet to come. She claimed that we can expect, a major conflict in Europe, which, I mean, it's ripe for the picking, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're closing in on something much larger if things don't change.
Yes. She also said UFO encounters with government being reported.
I mean,
the TikTok
just did a thing.
videos and...
Well, I was going to say, they just did a UAP hearing.
Yes.
Like this past week.
Alien encounters that will appear in 2024. So again...
I'm ready.
Yeah, bring it on.
You got to hurry, though.
Yeah, we're running out of time quick. Severe climate disasters, including hurricanes, typhoons, earthquakes, and tornadoes in places where they shouldn't really occur.
Yeah, we're seeing that.
We are definitely, we're checking some boxes here. Major droughts and wildfires to plague multiple continents.
Man, she's right on the money.
Yeah. And she also warned of a new world war that would be launched in 2025.
I mean, I see it. I can see that.
The writing's on the wall.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff pointing in that direction.
Now, in the past, her predictions appear, for the most part, as a consensus for many experts as 85% accuracy. That's pretty high in the whole scheme of predictions and whatever world you want to call that. So not great odds to gamble with at such high stakes as, the rest of us are here. Yeah, right. But I guess, we'll just have to kind of hang around and wait for a little bit longer, and maybe it won't be Santa that'll come in a sleigh, but an alien and a UFO that'll come and bring us presents for Christmas.
Seems uniquely suited to our podcast.
It does. It does.
So we've talked about it, and I think you may have touched on it. Maybe I'm just kind of beating a dead horse here, but what was your first exposure, experience, encounter with the Baba Yaga?
I'm beating the dead horse. The Dungeons and Dragons, beating the dead dragon. So much of Dungeons and Dragons is based on, as we've talked about, mythology and history and different things, folklore. I remember basically first becoming a dungeon master, and I'd only played for 2 or 3 years, and as Bill knows, there's far more players than there ever was.
Before you became a dungeon master?
For a couple years, yes.
I never had that luxury.
There's never enough DMs to go around. So there's the one poor kid that plays that just gets kind of elected to be the DM.
Yeah,
I was that guy.
I was always a DM.
But I remember going through the book and the sketch just stood out. I'm like, what am I looking at? What is this hut with chicken legs?
I'm almost certain if I'm probably envisioning the same sketch you're referencing, to be honest.
Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual, And it's like... Is that the monster that you're supposed to put up against the player? Does this house eat people? What's going on here?
Such an iconic image too. Like if you know the folklore, like you see the chicken-legged hut, it's Baba Yaga. Like you said, the Hellboy scene, and then the David Harbour Hellboy movie with the chicken-legged. I mean, as soon as you see it, you're just like, oh crap!
God honest truth, we were watching some movie previews, and I probably would have went and saw it. I like Hellboy. But as soon as I saw Baba Yaga's hut is in the movie, I looked over at my wife. We both said at the same time, we've got to go watch this.
I haven't watched the last one yet, the Crooked Man, but it's based on like Appalachian folklore, and you know me.
I haven't saw that one either.
It looks good.
Not yet.
I will say probably my first absolute exposure was probably, like I said, I can almost picture the image you're thinking of, I'm sure. But there was an old Sierra video game in the old days of PC computing called Quest for Glory. In Quest for Glory, you played a hero, and it was sort of a early version of like these action-adventure RPG type games where you had like stats and an inventory and all that stuff. But it was kind of like a Dragon Slayer, if you remember that.
Okay,
It wasn't animated so much, but it was a very cartoony stuff. King's Quest. It looked very much like King's Quest.
Yes.
And I
Love
remember
King's
there's
Quest.
a scene in there where you come into a forest clearing and there's a hut. And as you approach the hut, it stands up on chicken legs and walks away from you. And part of it is getting to the hut and getting inside. And I was just like, what is this? Like, and then the
I
first
want to
time,
go in, but do I really want to go in?
then, later on, of course, seeing Baba Yaga, the D&D reference, and it jogging my memory, going, oh, okay, and then learning about the mythology there. Yeah, like I think that's probably the one that sticks out for me is that particular video game. So even back then, in video games, you had Baba Yaga, and now, of course, that's a big part of the plot line of Witcher 3 is going to the Baba Yaga for guidance and helping her out with stuff. And
definitely Hollywood is working to keep her alive. Maybe not in all the ways that we might think. And Scandinavians, I'm not sure how they feel, if they feel proud of that or that, they're insulted that we don't even pronounce it correctly. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both. But, my question, and I'm going to go off of, my headline aspect here of the fortune teller, the prophecy. So Mr. Bill, if we somehow, some way had magic, mystic abilities to predict one thing in the future, and let's say in the next 3 years, what do you think, if you had the powers of a Baba Yaga or Vaga, and you were to predict something, and we're going to come back and revisit this, providing we're still here in 3 years, to see how accurate our prediction will be.
So we're making a prediction.
We're making a prediction. In the next 3 years, what's something you predict would occur?
I think we're going to have non-human intelligence revealed to us.
Oh, I like that.
I say non-human.
I think I like that.
I know the term would be easy to say alien.
Sure.
I like to stay away from that. I like the term non-human. And that's been coming up a lot. That, these government people saying they've encountered non-human intelligence, and then, the Congress people are, dismissing it. I really think we're going to find out that there is non-human intelligence. Now, whether it's alien, whether it's some sort of interdimensional, something. God help me. I'm going to
herd of Bigfoot or whatever.
I was going to say, God help me. I'm going to go back to Lauren Boebert here, and I hate to do that because I can't stand her as a person. But she's talking about alien bases in the ocean, and I think that's perfectly feasible.
Yeah,
more than half this planet is covered by water, and it is less explored than the space around us.
Very true. Very true.
We know more about the moon than we do about the depths of the ocean. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a non-human intelligence there.
We are just starting to get some technology to get down to those depths. There's areas that we can't get to yet.
Now, you want to go with just a straightforward, I think everybody can agree with this one. I think there's going to be a lot of emotional distress over the next few years.
Yeah.
Like
a buffet of emotional distress.
Yeah. We were talking about sleep and before we came in to record, and I was talking about how I'd had trouble sleeping, and your wife mentioned that she's heard that from a lot of people, and it's for multiple reasons. Like, it's not, I don't want to limit it to any one thing, lest somebody think I'm trying to be political. But like in general, I think a lot of people are struggling with the day to day lately. And
sure.
I think I made a Facebook post. This was not the way things were supposed to be.
Yeah,
it is the way they are, but something just feels so wrong to me.
It's very off. It's out of kilter. Well, for me, I think we're on the brink of a war. I think almost everybody would probably agree with that.
I think that's unfortunately probably true.
It sounds maybe sadistic and very unfortunately realistic. Just looking back in history, it's like it's almost a scheduled time for another war.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I think if you look at it, the wealth disparity, the difference between the haves and have-nots, we are, historically speaking, we're on a path that's heading towards depression. A lot of the things that happened prior to the Great Depression are happening now. And if you look at American history, what really got us out of the Great Depression? World War II. Political tensions around the world are at an all-time high. You see authoritarian governments are at an all-time high. Someone said
Russian, Ukraine thing overseas.
Well, I actually saw a thing the other day that said we are in a democracy recession right now, where free and fair is actually on the way out. You see so many more totalitarian, authoritarian governments stepping in.
Well, and we've broached on this before, but both of us having to kind of restart our lives as at least middle-aged men.
Well, and I mean, depending on what the future holds, it may have to happen again.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my situation is a little different than yours, but
I remember like my father growing up, and it started happening back then, but like my grandfather especially, you dedicated your life to a company.
And they looked out for you.
Yes,
because that was worth something.
Lifetime. And
that doesn't exist.
would retire, 40, 50, 60 years, of working.
I will say the place that I'm at now does seem to have sort of that old fashioned mentality. I mean, not anywhere like what you're referencing, but if you go in and you do a good job and you put in the time and you're loyal, they wanted to take care of you.
Yep.
Now, just like any business, they're going to do what they got to do. But I mean, almost the values of the company I work for feel a little old fashioned in that respect. But yeah, you're right. I mean, my previous job, 20, almost 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
17 years for me.
Without warning, one day I find myself unemployed. So
yep. That's happened to me twice at two different companies. But I mean, yeah, we've got all the stuff, whether the war be overseas, like I said, the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, not trying to get political, but all the distrust, the distressing amount, for lack of a better term, a civil war.
The distrust in the institutions.
Yes.
Again, nobody trusts the government. Regardless of who you voted for in the election, you're either ecstatic or you're angry, and whatever the future brings, whoever you voted for, you may change your opinion over the next 4 years. You may have your opinion cemented. I think there's some very bad actors.
I think
involved.
At least in my span of life here, of what I remember of elections, this one really bolstered the amount. It really doesn't matter who won, because there would have been a big portion of the country. It was equally polarizing. Upset.
The conversations I had, I literally said, okay, it doesn't matter who wins. The next 4 years are going to be rough.
Yes.
And the time, the next 4 years and how, maybe even longer, it really didn't matter who won. It was going to be rough, because when you have a country that's divided almost 50-50,
mm-hmm.
half of the country is going to be mad no matter what.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
I had a lot of conversations.
Like really, oh my gosh, it's a win for everybody. Not existent.
When you look at past elections where it was like Reagan won all but one state when he ran, the country was united. When Obama ran, most of the country voted for Obama. I think Clinton as well. You don't have that anymore in America. We're so polarized and so divided. And
it takes something like 9/11 to pull the country together for a few weeks, it seems like, and then it all spins off the wheels again.
I was going to say, I think there's so much violent rhetoric and information out there. It's misinformation.
Oh my gosh, it's running rampant. You can't believe anything you see or read anymore.
So yeah, I don't think full scale war. I don't think any war we fight will be comparable to like World War II. I think the way we wage war has changed enough that you won't see that.
Yeah.
But
it'll be done with.
It'll be there.
Baba Yaga drone type stuff. Or, pushing buttons. And
people sitting behind a monitor playing video games.
Yep.
And that I don't like that either. It's the RoboCop thing. I think it takes the humanity out of it. So.
Well, there's our predictions, folks.
We're sorry.
We're sorry.
At least I was hopeful about aliens.
But Bill is definitely hoping, not that Santa needs to go away, but maybe an alien will take his place. Mine's even more sinister, that I think we're going to have a war of some sort. So if we're all still around in 3 years, we'll maybe come back and visit this and see how accurate we were. We hope that we've kind of broached and pulled back some of the curtains on this Baba Yaga folklore Scandinavian feature. We hope that you've learned and maybe enjoyed as much, I think, as both Bill and I probably did with this episode, preparing for it. And we ask that if you did, like, share, comment, let people know. It's something totally free that you can do to help us out in a big way. And once again, we appreciate each and every one of you, our dedicated listeners out there. We love what we do, and we appreciate you that love to listen in on us and get your takes on things as well. Thanks so much for listening.
Hey, real quick, call to action. I think Eric would agree. We'd like to grow this. Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Absolutely.
If you could, if you're listening on Apple, if you would go and give us a review and rate us. If you have some feedback, that's fine too. Whatever platform you're listening, follow us, rate us, give us some reviews. That helps get some recognition and gets our name out there.
We do have a Facebook page, Nightmares on the Lost Highway. You can easily find us if you want to communicate with us. If you want to share some possibilities for future podcasts with us, reach out. We want to talk with you guys.
I want to take a time to thank the people that helped bring this all together. Alex Tudor, you can almost call him our producer at this point. Sarah Tudor, who also helps with some of the technical stuff. I want to take a moment to extend thanks to Eric for letting us use his space to record in, kind of our makeshift studio.
I, in turn, would like to thank Bill for, one, putting up with me and using this camaraderie to do something we both very much love and enjoy doing, and thank Bill's family for allowing him to spend all the time to work and clean up our recordings and present them in what you hear in the final terms, the final edition, if you will.
And I'd like to thank all of you for continuing to listen. I know we've got some loyal followers out there. We do this as a labor of love, but we're happy that there are people that enjoy it hopefully as much as we do.
Thank you very much.